They need that.
Hmm. Cool. You good? Hey, Ben. Welcome back to the Clemson Pawcast. Clemson's D line has denied allegations of receiving NIL money from Charmin despite their super soft performance in South Bend. Bama has two losses before Thanksgiving for the first time since 2010. The Tigers are 8-1, and life is all right. Welcome back to the Clemson Podcast. I'm your host, Jarrett, joined tonight by Cody. Ben and Tully are traveling back from South Bend as we speak. So here we are, first loss of the season, and it was ugly. At one point, it was 28-0 in the fourth quarter, and most of us that were watching the game pretty much just weren't even mad at that point. We were just it was hard to believe. So this we may not go super in depth on every play and every twist and turn throughout the game, but we're here to kind of cover the big picture with our knowledge of the program and just put this game into context and what it means for us moving forward and how we possibly got here and what to do next. So with that said, Cody, what happened?
Well, a lot happened. I would like to say was a long time coming, or this kind of loss was a long time in the making. There was a lot of squeaky wheels that were left ungreased. I guess I don't know the right saying, but there were a lot of things that we didn't needed to tend to. I think over a long period of time, and you haven't seen this type of loss. I think I saw Quacking Tiger say it's the worst loss in 10 years. I would say it reminds me the most of the 2013 Florida State game, and
Yep. It's
where we
immediately
were
what I said.
the 2013 Florida
Yeah.
State game. That was your
Just
yeah.
um, outplayed, and you're just watching it like, how is this? Mhm.
Yeah, like we're beat up in the trenches. Well, and the difference in that game was that was the eventual national championship winner, and that was a really really good Florida State team. Whereas this wasn't a really good Notre Dame team. I think they have potential. They have they're on their talent. I think they've underplayed relative to their talent level this year, but it's not a very good Notre Dame team. We should have beat them by 2 touchdowns or at least 1 touchdown. So that what went wrong to your original question? It's like a lot of things went wrong. I guess we'll get into that. But the fact that we got so roughed up, we got so outcoached, and uh, it was so lopsided. It really sticks with you. And I will say the one thing that was nice is like you kind of felt it as a Clemson fan, like this is unfamiliar. We haven't been here in a while. And Dabo felt it too in the press conference, and I think I think that he said it was an ass kicking. He doesn't cuss that much, and he says we have a long way to go to clean this up. So that was kind of that was comforting to hear him just on up to it. Yeah, he did say it's all on me. I appreciate the ownership, the accountability, but that's kind of deflecting because the reality is it isn't all on him, and I think we'll talk more about who it is actually on more in this episode.
Yeah, Jocko would be pretty proud of him taking extreme ownership on that. So, but that's just Dabo's always going to do that. And if that surprises you, you haven't been following, you don't know who he is. He's always going to defend his culture, his program, and especially his players and his coaches. Um, just because I think part of him he's investing so much of his life into this college program, right? Into this culture and what he's trying to build. And whether or not we think that he's taking the best steps to give us long-term success is kind of irrelevant in the sense that like he just believes that these are the right moves. Um, but yeah, the things that have been long time coming, if you remember, and I know that you do, the last time I really feel like we had a dominant offense was probably that Bama 2018 game. Now, I know that we had some really dominant games in 2019, but it just seems like that's kind of the tipping point to where it just slowly started to, you know, I guess like get worse and worse. And, just to kick off talking about offense, I mean, what are your thoughts leading up to this over the last couple of years, and then what did you see on the field, those warts that finally came to the surface.
Well, I mean, I think, well, there's a lot there because we've seen a lot written, and we've talked offline about, Brandon Streeter, being a bad offensive coordinator. And I'm like, wait a second, like you got to take a more of a holistic view of what's been going on. Like, as you just mentioned, 2018 as us, the pinnacle of our offense. And then there's actually 2 more years to Trevor Lawrence after 2018. So what happened? Like, what's been going on since then? And Brandon's, these things predate Brandon Streeter as an offensive coordinator. So to look at it just through the lens of this game or even this whole season is an injustice to the truth, and in particular Brandon Streeter. I think he's been fine. I think part of the thing is we're dealing with a quarterback that does have some issues like psychologically. I don't know if anything's going on outside of football. That I think that was the case a little bit last year. Um, he maybe he's rattled, and I don't know what the reason for that is. Last year he seemed to be rattled, and he was a completely different quarterback. And you saw shades of what he could be through the first, I guess, 7 games this season, and then over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I guess, it's just kind of unraveled. And the one thing I'll say is Clemson is not built, and they've shown no evidence of building a team that's championship contending without a generational quarterback. There's no evidence to suggest they're able to do that with other parts of the, let's say, offense. Defense, yeah, they put that on. They put national championship level defenses together before, but this isn't like Georgia's running game where you can just ground and pound, and there's not star-studded receivers on the outside. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
You're totally right. It's I think psychologically, you read into the reports that the coaches say after the games, and just on that, they seem to be very cautiously always trying to hype DJ up and to talk about he's going to have his confidence, he's going to get his confidence back, he's going to be confident the next game. Um, because I think the truth is that they really just understand that this kid's like kind of a house of cards in the sense that as soon as he starts to spiral and starts to like lose confidence, he's just feels bad and he's trying to look for the perfect play to redeem himself. And if it's not there, he'll force something, or he'll just like not even see a super obvious play because he's like in his own head. And I mean, love the kid. He's done so much over the last year or two to improve, but you can't be elite at any athletic endeavor, whether it's football or chess or jujitsu or whatever it is, if you can't put a loss behind you. If you make that loss carry on to 2 or 3 more losses, that's what KJ Henry and the guys were saying today, this week in the interviews. Is like, we can't let Notre Dame make us lose to Louisville just because we're in our heads about it. So most of the team understands that. It's just, I think they schemed up pretty conservatively. Maybe that's because of the wind. Maybe that's more likely because they wanted to ease him back into being confident. But by the time they started to open it up, it's kind of too late. So, do you think that they could have done anything differently with the offensive game plan? Again, not that we're going to pull apart in a film review, but just, from your gut. You were at the game, so.
Yeah, I guess they could have been more aggressive. Certainly a mentality of being the aggressor. Like Notre Dame certainly was, and Clemson certainly wasn't. The win did play a role. To me, it was like you're basically taking, everything like 10-yard passes and down and further. Like you're taking that out of our offensive repertoire. So it's like we're completely kind of muted or stunted. You're kind of taking one of DJ's best characteristics. And I know it was going to be a tough. It was going to be tough passing through those high level wins, but you had to at least show some things on film to make their defense fear you a little bit. So I think that there was a decision to go conservative, and it probably coincided with the fact that DJ was benched the game before. So it's probably those two things: not trusting him to make the passes, or even worse, a bad pass into the wind gets intercepted, and then we really unravel. But you're kind of choosing you're choosing between two bad paths, really. You can
Hmm.
be conservative and risk averse, or you can not be. And either way, um, we took the conservative route, and it bit us in the end. I think they should have came in with a little bit more confidence in DJ and gave him a chance to pass a little bit more downfield. But that's hindsight, obviously.
No, I agree. And the fact that they didn't and they see him every day in practice probably meant that, like, hey, they were nervous that anything that happens early that makes him start to doubt himself is going to, unravel him for the rest of the game. Otherwise, they'd be like, hey, look, if he's a different guy, they'd be like, look, DJ can come out here, we'll give him some passes, and he'll throw it to overthrow it or underthrow it if it's in harm's way. He's not going to put a ball in jeopardy, but he's going to, at least we're going to give him some shots downfield and stuff. And it feels like they just kind of don't trust him to not make a mistake or be in his head. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's too bad. Like, it was just so pathetic, like seeing us get no points until the fourth quarter. Like you said, I was at the FSU game as a student. That was my last semester at Clemson. And man, watching them go up like it was nothing when we had like 7 points, it was like 24-7 in like the second quarter. And it was just like, it was over. So
yeah,
that's exactly what this game felt like.
yeah. That you have to take like those bumps and bruises on the ascent to be an elite. You have to like gauge yourself against some
Mm-hmm.
like a team that truly was elite in Florida State that year, and you're like, whoa, we're not there.
Yeah.
Here's the things that are wrong with us.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're on the backside of like being great and having a short dynasty that I guess we had, then you
Mm-hmm.
get then you get beat by someone like Notre Dame. It's like, oh man, that's not Florida State 2013. So it stings. It definitely stings.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it helps us a lot in recruiting. But yeah,
No.
I think with yeah with DJ, like one going kind of going back to Brandon Streeter and his choice to go conservative. When I My takeaway after this game was, wow, I'm amazed that Brandon Streeter has been able to get this much out of DJ. I mean, he was arguably on a Heisman watch, or at least you could put him in the conversation just like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So
Mm-hmm.
he was pulling all. I thought he was pushing and whatever, pulling all the right buttons to get as much
Mm-hmm.
out of him, easing him in. So early in their season, he's a little bit more conservative. I thought that was intentional. I think that's correct. And really getting and seeing what was an all conference caliber quarterback for a few games, maybe a little bit a few more in
Mm-hmm.
DJ. So this game to me was like, wow, I'm impressed with what Brandon Streeter has done. And then I go and like I read on different. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Shaking the Southland, other comment boards, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like fire Brandon Streeter. Bad internal hire, no experience, blah blah blah. And maybe they're right. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
Jarrett. You tell me, Jarrett. I don't know if you want to talk about the coaching and the off season decisions, but I don't. I still. I'm going to stand in this hill right now until I have more evidence. But I'm going to say Brandon Streeter has been an upgrade based
Yeah.
off of what we saw last year. And what we saw
Mm-hmm.
last year was horrible. It's horrific, both
Yeah.
from quarterback play, offensive line play. Certain parts have gotten better, obviously, this year, with DJ being a big part of that. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, what? I guess I'll let you speak, but I guess just it goes back to like, what were your expectations coming into the season? If did were you expecting Deshaun Watson
Yeah.
in 2016? What were you expecting?
No, I think the record will show that we were all cautiously optimistic, and we didn't even know if he was going to not transfer. Like, we thought, maybe Cade comes in and looks really good and he just says, screw this, I'm going to go somewhere else. So the fact that Streeter was able to guide him and bring him to a stable point where he was looking like that all conference quarterback says a lot about Streeter. And it also, you know, again, we're not super film guys, but it doesn't take one to realize we're attacking the middle of the field more. We're using the tight ends more. There's more creativity in the offense and in the passing game. We're using a lot more motion and sweeps and stuff like we've been calling for. So Streeter has added a lot more with Richardson to the passing game and to the playbook. I think it's just that, he did whatever he could to build DJ up all summer and spring, summer, and fall. And then, as soon as he started taking chinks in the armor, it's just like falling apart. And I hate to talk about him like that because he's a 22-year-old kid or 21-year-old kid. But that's just the reality when you play at this level. Is like if you mentally can't put one bad play behind you, then it doesn't matter if who's freaking calling the plays. If it's Chip Kelly or if it's Chad Morris or um, Brad Scott, it's not going to work out. And yeah, like you said, we haven't really been building those elite wide receiver core. Is Grisham terrible? He's not great. Doesn't seem to be. Doesn't seem like we've had a lot of serious depth and development. We see guys that come in that are talented and then they stay about that level and, not really take that next step like Ngata and Bo and, some of those other players. So I think that the intensity is lost on both sides and both coordinators are new. It's their first year. So do we want to keep beating offense like a dead horse? I mean, anything else you want to say? It's better than it was last year. I think the quarterback is just shaky and they know it and they're nervous and Cade's not ready yet. So they're just doing what they can.
Yeah, and I think it proved out. It's tough with Cade Klubnik he has not looked good. And I don't mean that like in a production sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
Because when he comes in late in games, I don't put too much
Mm-hmm.
stock. I just want to see how he's processing things. If he does make a
Mm-hmm.
downfield pass, did he go through a progression? Is he locking in on a receiver? Is the guy open? What's his
Mm-hmm.
accuracy? And it seems like the game's coming really fast for him. He
Mm-hmm.
hasn't that interception was not it wasn't random. Like he's going to
Mm-hmm.
throw some interceptions based off of the way he's reading the game, which he's going to need more time. So it's tough like to say like I don't know. Going back to like them putting in Kate Klubnik, I think if they were going to do it, they did it
Mm-hmm.
a series too late. And
Yeah,
if they
I
were going
agree.
to do it, they could not do it at that part of the field. You had to do it in a
Mm-hmm.
position where if you're going to take some risk with the passing, you can't be doing it from like your own 5 yard line. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think Dabo knew it was a mistake after the fact, or I'm sure they knew internally they either didn't act fast enough
Mm-hmm.
or they shouldn't have acted at all because DJ was probably mentally done after that too. So
Yeah, I was calling for DJ to get one more drive after the half and just turn it over to Cade and just give him the rest of the game. I mean, even if he sucks, like we sucked up to that point. Like at that point, I don't care about the psyche. Like I'm trying to win the game, you know? And it's like if Cade can um get things going because he hasn't had a ton. You could probably look back and he's maybe had like what would you say? Over under on a dozen drives this season. I'd take the under.
series, yeah, it's well,
Maybe it's like 10.
Syracuse might have pushed it over 12, but it's probably, yeah, if you remove for Syracuse, it's
Yeah.
definitely under 10.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he needs time, and I wonder if that's what we'll see moving forward. That's what I want to see is he needs to get more snaps, and it's not that I hate DJ or whatever. It's just that like if we're gonna know what Cade's gonna be next year, we have to see it this year, and he has to get some real game snaps that count with the ones and the twos, against real teams and not just in garbage time.
Yeah, I mean it's so fun. Like Dan Orlovsky said that of ESPN. He's got some he's a little hot takey, but we're the hot takey guys
Mm-hmm.
of the so we're
Yeah.
he said you have to go with Kate Klubnik, and he might not be wrong. It's you are I don't want to say effectively, but more or less, I think you're done in terms of the
Mm-hmm.
playoffs. And if you're a Clemson fan that's holding on to hope for the playoffs, it's like you didn't watch Saturday night's game. Like I want no part in a
Yeah.
semifinal
You don't want.
blowout. Um, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
If we could right this ship, then that would be great. I guess my point of that is we're a long way from being a playoff team, and we've taken steps back in the last few weeks. So you
Mm-hmm.
do have to think about like what's best for the team. There's a lot of seniors and at least a lot of third year guys that won't be returning next year. I think you have to put your best foot forward. And if that is Cade, and maybe it is, maybe he's a spark plug. He certainly doesn't have the
Mm-hmm.
talent. Things are slow for him, but when you put him in against Syracuse, he got things going. Maybe that's the reason. Obviously, you're building up for next year.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think it's that big a risk at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It may diminish the product of the offense a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, you are setting yourself up for next year. That's a tough one, but just going back to the offense as a whole, like I guess like you pointed out Tyler Grisham, and I've heard position coaches get floated around. I just can't assign the blame on position coaches, not new ones like this.
Mm-hmm.
Like Caldwell, Pierman over a decade or almost close to a decade. When you see recruiting misses over and over, you don't see
Mm-hmm.
development. Although with Caldwell, you did see some development in lower ranked offensive linemen. But when you see
Mm-hmm.
these kind of trends that seem to be systemic over time, you can isolate it. Like for example, Pierman wasn't recruiting very well in North Carolina, which was his territory. Like you can isolate it to a specific coach. I can't put too much stock in CJ Spiller or Tyler
Mm-hmm.
Grisham because if you want to look at if you're just playing the like what have you done for me, and looking at a vacuum of the receivers that you coach,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna put Ngata on him. You gotta give him credit for Cornell Powell and Amari Rogers in there last year. You got to give him credit for recruiting Antonio Williams. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's been some misses in recruiting, and I think that does have to improve. I can't put too much weight into Tyler Grisham or CJ Spiller. Like, what are you gonna complain about Shipley or Maffa right now? That's going pretty well.
Yeah.
The thing I will say, if you want to critique Dabo, not for or one specific guy, but critique Dabo for not bringing someone more experience or an outside voice or an outside eye, I could see that there's merit to that argument. Just getting new blood. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
Dabo, here's the things that we did at XYZ University, and then
Mm-hmm.
you bring in that diversity of ideas, which yields I think a greater culture and a greater overall football product. But you give him criticism all day for that. I just have a hard time isolating it to a specific position coach, and I'm open to arguments that rebut that. But
Mm-hmm.
that's just how I feel.
That's respectable. Yeah, I you have a lot of patience to be able to say that when most of us don't want to wait, and it's easy to scapegoat a position coach because of what you see in certain aspects, maybe with selective memory about certain things. When you do have, yeah, Amari, you do have Cornell Powell. Um, you know, um, what's your hot take on how long would it take you before you say CJ is trash at recruiting running backs, and so is Grisham? Another 2 years of kind of not much, so like 4 years in the program.
That's
That's
a
like a
good
college
question.
degree. So basically, if they graduate, if they get their degree and they have a 2.0 GPA,
Yeah, that's a
what
good
do you
question.
think?
I think you give, by all, all indications suggest that Grisham had a pretty good haul this year. We haven't really gotten to see Randall yet, but it sounds like he has
Mm-hmm.
two pretty good ones in this class. Bo Collins was a good one from last class. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think you give them both probably 2 more years. You can,
Yeah.
I don't follow recruiting as much as I used to do. I used to, there's who you're ending up on people's final list is an indicator of what kind of relationships you're able to build and what tier of prospects you're uh, you're attracting and I haven't
Mm-hmm.
haven't dug into that as much in the last few years, so I couldn't say. But I'd say that the talent level has been fine at running back over the last couple of years. It's starting to decline at
Mm-hmm.
receiver, and I think that's been pretty obvious. And it's not just that; it's health and it's some busts. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you recruit 4-star guys, you expect a couple of them to work out. That hasn't been the case. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'd say 2 more seasons, Jarrett. Long story long.
I like it. I like it. Long story long. That's what we do when we have not much else to say, but just we'll keep it moving. Keeping it
Yeah.
moving, and let's talk about the defense. So, yeah, I don't recall. ever seeing a team that just looked so soft, like all the way across. I mean, we had some stops, and then we would let a 12-yard run go by, and then maybe one stop, and then another 8-yard run. And they, like you said in the top of the show, it's very clear that like each game we've had little things that have gone wrong that we've been able to compensate for with other ways. Like Dabo and them say, we've found ways to win in every single game except this one, because it felt like every issue that we had all popped up in the same game. The stretch run play from FSU, the struggles in the passing game from Syracuse, and interceptions and stuff like that. So it just felt like there was no way to get away from all of our bad habits or bad luck or whatever you want to call it. But, when you watch the defense, even at the game, I mean, was it as surprising for you to see this team just constantly get gashed over and over with all the talent that we have, especially on paper?
Exactly. That was my thought. We look small out there, and we're not. By the way, like on
Mm-hmm.
paper and weigh-ins, like there's
Mm-hmm.
there's plenty of NFL linemen on Clemson's defensive line, but we seem to be smaller than them on both lines of scrimmage. By the way,
Yeah.
which is obviously we weren't, but we're just getting pushed off the line. I haven't seen anything like that in years. That's just not what we
Mm-hmm.
what we come accustomed to. And it's okay to take some
Mm-hmm.
losers here or there to a really good team. And I think Notre Dame's offensive line is pretty good, but look, they don't have a
Mm-hmm.
quarterback. The wind's blowing at
Yeah.
15, 20 miles an hour. They're not passing, so you know what they're going to do. So from that point,
Mm-hmm.
it's all about just getting penetration up front and gap fits and up from your
Mm-hmm.
linebackers, and that's where it's been a problem all year, like you said, and it just kind of it all came crumbling down. And that's we've kind of talked about this, but I don't put as much heat on the offensive staff yet. Now you want to take holistically put Dabo versus some systemic failures over time, dating back to
Mm-hmm.
as late as 2018, to not enhance the offense or look for new hires. Sure, but I don't put in the immediate, like right now, I don't put that on Brandon Streeter. However, on
Mm-hmm.
defense, I do think there is some blame on the coaching, on the intensity, on lack of tackling, lack of effort, poor gap fits, because these aren't
Mm-hmm.
rookies, these aren't first year players. You have 4 and 5 year guys out there that aren't finding their gaps, and
That look worse. They look like first year guys.
it's the best linebacker unit on paper.
Mm-hmm.
Say what you will, but it's the best linebacker unit with depth. I mean, like, to put it in perspective, I was thinking about this. Levante Bentley, I think, and Keith McGuire
Mm-hmm.
would have been at the same talent level as our 2015 linebackers, and those
Mm-hmm.
are those are our backups this year.
Yeah.
Just for some perspective. I mean, no offense to Kendall Joseph or Ben Boulware, but I think Bentley and McGuire are close to as good as they were. So
Mm-hmm.
like, what's lacking? It's certainly not talent. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it goes to Wes Goodwin a little bit, and again, we talked about him last 2 weeks ago, whenever it was. Uh, Clearly, there's going to be a drop off from Brent Venables, but I did
Mm-hmm.
not expect to see it this soon. I didn't expect to see it with the lack of intensity, and Brent Venables' energy and intensity went with him to Oklahoma. Well, actually, I don't know. It might have stayed on the plane. I don't know what happened, but it's not in Clemson anymore, though. We'll say.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's really been shocking to read and then watch, because it seems like the defense, I figured early on, it's like, okay, there's injuries, and then Davis was out for games, and then Brazil was out for a couple games, and XT's been in and out, and all the different injuries in the secondary. So like I figured, oh wow, FSU, we're gonna be healthy, they're gonna get crushed, it's gonna be great. And then didn't see it. Syracuse didn't see it. And then Notre Dame really didn't see it. So it's almost, I'm willing to hot take and say that like the defense has just gotten worse over the last like couple of games, and it's just getting less intense, less focused. It looks like today was our first game of the season, and it looks like we were going backwards. In instead of we've been playing 8 games, it looks like we've been playing 2 games, right? And something that's really weird is all season you hear about this is one of our best practice weeks, and we were very intense and I had great effort and we're all over the ball. and then they play the game, and then they say, yeah, we don't know, it just didn't really match and how we looked in practice, and we don't know why. And that's a super big head scratcher for me, maybe because I don't know enough to read between those lines. But it makes me wonder, like, is there not as many vocal leaders on the defense? Do the players not really trust Goodwin's scheme, or maybe he's calling different stuff that they practice or something. But it's hard to know why all of these really talented players would just play with less intensity and just kind of, almost like just loafing around. I mean, this game might as well have been sponsored by Sperry Topsiders. There was so much loafing going on.
That's a good one, man.
Yeah, what are your thoughts?
No, you're exactly right. And I don't know, like, again, we talked about it behind the scenes. It's hard to like understand and draw connections between a coach, their intensity level, what we see from Venables on the sidelines. It's like clearly we don't have that anymore, and then it's hard to
Mm-hmm.
blame Wes Goodwin because, like you said, you don't know what's going on with position group coaches. You don't know what's going on with the players. Are there other issues, or are they focused on the NFL?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's going on, but I know that for 10 years, I didn't see this lack of toughness. And
Not even close. Yeah.
have a great A/B test because we had more or less the same defense last year.
Mm-hmm.
I'd argue that they're better. The secondary's fallen off for sure, but
Mm-hmm.
that front seven's just as good, and that's where we've had issues. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what's going on, but if I were to peg something on Dabo, look, he's got, the season's not over. There's a lot to do from here. I do think the
Mm-hmm.
playoffs probably out of the question, but ACC championship is still, we're still in the
Yeah.
running. But I do think Dabo, you can't do anything crazy mid-season. So if I'm a fan and I'm a little irate and I want to see heads on stick, like I don't think we're there yet. But
Mm-hmm.
if I don't see improvement on both sides of the football, I think he's
Mm-hmm.
got to make some tough decisions in the offseason. And if he doesn't, that's when I'm really going to say, okay, Dabo, there is some hubris, there's stubbornness there. There's a guy that's not willing
Mm-hmm.
to reinvent himself and infuse new blood, new ideas into the program. All those
Mm-hmm.
look, I do criticize him for not doing that and not accepting transfers. If he doesn't start looking at the transfer portal, like
Mm-hmm.
this offseason, I'm gonna have to like what's going on, Dabo? Like, come on, man. You were the guy
Mm-hmm.
that you were the forward thinking, the innovative guy in 2011. Like,
Mm-hmm.
where did that guy go? I don't know. I can't remember what I was talking about. Between like, was it Wes Goodwin? I don't remember
Yeah,
where we
not ready
started
to
there.
put their head. We're not ready to put their heads on sticks, but we need to see some changes and
Yeah,
willingness to innovate. And we've been beating this horse for a couple years now. And um, Dabo, when he's been saying the best is yet to come for the last 8 years, it's like it seems like it's starting to be his vision of that is like he envisions the entire Clemson football program to be run by former players. That's a really admirable, crazy tough thing to do and have like actually talented people that are doing the thing. But I think what's happening is that like he's wanting that more than he's wanting to have the single best person in that role because it fits this like Dabo land, as I'm going to start calling it, that he's trying to create. And I mean, to me, like Clemson is Dabo, Dabo is Clemson. Like that's who I think of when I think of even my time as a student there is just, his little isms and all this type of stuff. But I think if we go a couple of years, 2 to 3 years from now, and he really hasn't made any improvements and we're, sitting in that 9-3, 10-2 consistently year after year type of range, like that's when we're going to have to say, okay, like this has been a great run, but if we don't innovate all the way through, then are we going to be stuck like this for another decade? And I'm
yeah,
not saying at all it's time for Dabo to be on the hot seat, but you know, it, fans have a short memory. We have a short memory.
yeah. I, I think you're right. So my theory on that, and I think this is original. I haven't read this anywhere. Is
Mm-hmm.
Dabo does not prioritize winning
Mm-hmm.
as his highest goal anymore. He did
Sure.
on during the ascent, and I think Nick Saban has always done that. It's more
Mm-hmm.
cutthroat with Nick Saban. I'm here to win, and that I prioritize that over everything else. I think Dabo has put other facets of the program over winning. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even fully criticizing that. I think almost everything he's done is noble and admirable, but
Mm-hmm.
from promoting from within, giving like helping guys advance their career, finding good people, finding great players,
Mm-hmm.
nurturing them and giving them a vision for the Paul journey so they can, kind of, have a great career path forward outside of football. I think all of those things have started to become more important than winning, which it's fine, but I
Mm-hmm.
you can't forget what funded all those things. Like I don't know, you at some point
Yeah.
you gotta like if you I don't think we stay static at 8-4 or 9-3 or whatever. I don't think that's what happens here. I think you
Mm-hmm.
I think the wheels come off a bit and you have seasons that are 500. So I think Dabo's gonna have to dig deep in the off season and try to figure out if winning is the top priority going forward, and if culture building and that part of the program is more important. But I wish he would tell us as fans if that's what he's gonna do.
Yeah. Yeah, and no one's going to want to be a part of a culture no matter how good it is if you're going, 50-50 in your season. So we'll just have to see. This game gave us a lot to think about. Um, any other games out there this week? I know we didn't. I feel like it was hard to keep up with any other games other than it was nice to see Bama lose in overtime. Although I do hate watching both LSU and Brian Kelly win. I'll accept it if it means Saban's out of the playoffs for the year. Um, Tennessee lost. I don't know if you got to check out that game, but kind
No.
of thought that they'd be able to put up more of a fight. I think they just got behind and their tempo caught up with them, and then Georgia just played keep away.
Yeah, I mean, this is worst case scenario is Clemson's on the decline and Georgia's about to go back to back with national championships. So that
Yeah.
this is a nightmare.
Yeah, fade me.
Um, I will say South Bend was I was preoccupied at South Bend. It was a lovely area. Indiana is not so great. Sorry if anybody's
Hmm.
from there who listens. I was only on one strip of highway that was a lot of nothingness, and and then wow, there's Notre Dame like in the middle. It's like a little oasis
Hmm.
of nothing, Indiana. It was great. Their fans were great.
Yeah.
I would compare them a lot to Clemson fans. It was a good experience there. So
Nice.
outside of the outcome of the game.
Of course. Of course. Well, look, we'll wrap it up there. This has been a short and sweet podcast. Ben and Tully will be back on next week, hopefully, some combination of the four of us. And I think that's all we got. So until then, go Tigers.
Yeah, man. I was